Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Sustainability Summit 2020. On your screens, what you saw was the intro video of Tetra Pak, and they were just highlighting more of what the company does, and they are one of our lead sponsors for the Sustainability Summit. So welcome to the team from Tetra Pak, Old Mutual, Syntech, and of course, all other organizations that are participating in this discussion and also in the summit. Please don't forget to hashtag SAS Summit 2020 and to also visit our 3D Expo exhibition. Ask questions, engage with some of our exhibitors, and you stand a chance to win great rewards there. We're now about to kickstart our panel discussion as inferred from our opening address, who was the acting DDG of the Department of Environmental Affairs. We are talking the vision net zero waste in packaging. And our key discussions this afternoon is how do we implement zero waste to landfill to ensure that we have a product life cycle approach. And with me this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, we have Tamara Ballock, who is the Public Affairs Director at EMEA. We also have Bridget Vermaak from Experian ITAD, and she's a specialist there, an ITAD specialist. We also have Shabir Jatnam, who's an executive director at Packaging SA. We also have Emmanuel Kasese, who's a program manager of the Western Cape Industrial Symbiosis Program in the Green Cape. Welcome to everybody. We'll then ask Tamara, maybe you can provide just a brief intro of yourself and your organization. After Tamara, we'll have Shabir, Bridget, and Emmanuel.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to welcome you to this round of sessions on behalf of Tetra Pak. As you mentioned correctly, Tetra Pak is a partner of the Sustainability Summit, and we are honored to work together. As we all know, this is a very important topic in South Africa. We have been present as Tetra Pak in South Africa for 62 years. One would say if this was a human lifetime, it would be a time to retire. However, for us, this is a time to innovate, evolve, and as always, provide safe and healthy food for everyone and everywhere. Everyone would argue that this was the most challenging year for all of us, and we at Tetra Pak remain committed to our global sustainability transformation agenda and creation of the low-carbon circular economy. As an investor and employer and responsible community member of South Africa, we remain committed to our business in this country and the region, and obviously our customers. A bit of a background on our global operations before I hand over to our other interlocutors. Tetra Pak is the world-leading food processing and packaging solutions company. We're working closely with our customers and suppliers. We provide safe, innovative, and environmentally sound products that each day meet the needs of hundreds of millions of people in more than 160 markets around the world. We have more than 25,000 employees around the world, and we believe in responsible industry leadership and as well as sustainable approach to business. Our promise around the world and in South Africa is to protect what's good, and this is reflected in our vision to make food safe and available everywhere. I'm very much looking forward to being part of this discussion today.
Thank you very much, Tamara. That was quite insightful, and truly we look forward to hearing more of what Tetra Pak does in terms of the strategy around implementing zero waste. Mr. Jatnam?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for having me on the panel. Via Jetam, Executive Director of Packaging SA. Packaging SA represents the majority of converters or producers of packaging in South Africa, approximately 80% of all producers. Other members include brand owners, retailers, as well as associate members, also a significant portion of raw material suppliers. So our key focus is to promote packaging and also support the industry, especially in terms of government legislation. We've been very busy with EPR. I'm sure you're aware that the new EPR regulations have been passed. We've had certain issues with it. We've addressed it directly with Minister Creasy, our Minister of Environment, yesterday, and it's been a very positive meeting, and we will be engaging with her and the team to make certain amendments to the EPR regulations. I'd finally just like to add, Tetra Pak South Africa is a member of Packaging SA as well. So we appreciate Tetra Pak being part of the Packaging SA, under the Packaging SA umbrella. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
And we appreciate your partnership.
An absolute pleasure, Tamara.
Bridget?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the time to chat with you all. I'm from a company called Expan. Our main focus is ensuring the safe disposal of IT assets. We've contributed to the circular economy in ensuring that we take redundant IT equipment, refurbish it, and redistribute it. We have different methods in which we do so. What we do is we donate some of these assets back to schools or non-profit organizations. And we also make them available to South Africans, obviously, at a more affordable rate than what it would be as a new asset. This means that we've got less equipment going back into the landfill, and we're using what we can to refurbish and redistribute. Obviously, now with Corona, there's been a high demand for laptops, and manufacturers couldn't keep up with it. This obviously assisted us in rebuilding and refurbishing a number of laptops and being able to redistribute them to South Africa. We are one of the biggest in our field currently. We operate from Kaya Sands in Johannesburg, and we are about 65 strong at the moment. I know that sounds small to any corporate, but in our space, it's quite big. So that's what we do. I'm sure we'll chat a little bit more about it later, but that is who we are.
Thank you very much, Bridget. Thank you. Emmanuel?
Hello, everyone. I'm really excited to be to take part in this plenary session.
Yes.
So just to introduce myself, my name is Emmanuel Kasese. I work for an NPO called Green Cape. We are focused on driving the green economy within South Africa and Africa as a whole. So I manage a program called the Western Cape Industrial Services Program, which is funded by City of Cape Town. And what we do there, just to give you a bit of context, is industrial symbiosis is where you identify any underutilized materials that companies have. That's mostly in the form of byproducts and waste streams. Then you try and find other companies that can make use of these materials. So one company's waste can be used by another company's resource. In a way, we're trying to sort of mimic nature with the notion of waste is almost non-existent. But the idea is to try to establish a symbiotic network of companies within South Africa share resources. And we're really trying to push this approach with companies to try and get them to be more resource efficient with their waste, with their water, and their energy. And I think the work that we do sits perfectly well within the zero waste to landfill and net zero emissions vision, because through symbiosis, landfilling is avoided, and the associated greenhouse gas emission reductions that come with that. I think just as an example, we've managed to divert over 100,000 tons of waste from going to landfill since the inception of the program in 2013. And I think my understanding is when we're talking about net zero emissions, there are probably just two ways that is achievable. So the first one is by completely decarbonizing the economy. And the second one is by either reducing your emissions, then complementing that with carbon capture technologies through sequestration via afforestation or other carbon capture storage mechanisms that are available. But I think the most important thing that I would really love to be addressed is when you have a vision, I think it's very important that you sort of follow those SMART principles where it has to be specific, it has to be measurable, it has to be achievable, realistic, and time-bound. And I think that's something that we'll see as the vision is unpacked as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. Just to kickstart the conversation then, tomorrow we'll start with you. Is the vision net zero waste measurable and achievable in the context of the challenges affecting third world countries, particularly where waste is concerned? Do you think that we will be able to achieve a net zero waste vision? Is it measurable? Is it achievable, according to you?
Well, I think measuring and achieving is very important, but also it's the road that leads to there. And if we talk about it, we need to talk about the infrastructure that is in place and the infrastructure that needs to be built in order for us to strive to achieve the net zero waste. I would say the first and foremost is about establishing the post-consumer collection system that will work for all the materials. And as the gentleman before us from the South African government mentioned, the new EPR legislation and waste management law is trying to do exactly that. And I think working out the details that Shabir mentioned now is the key part of the implementation of the new EPR legislation. And I think that's a big compliment for South Africa to have this legislation in place, unlike many other even more developed markets around the world. And in some way, it could be used as a blueprint for others. This legislation paves the way to significant reduction in waste. However, there are some quite important nuances that we need to discuss as we go into implementation. Education and awareness also will be crucial component to achieving that vision. It's a long road, but we believe there is a will on both ends, government, industry, and on our end, we also need to work with educating consumers in terms of the primary collection and establishing in their minds the awareness of the importance of reduction of waste. The average, just to give you an example, the average beverage carton recycling rate in South Africa is about 10%, and this must be improved. The challenge is to develop a recycling ecosystem that operates sustainably and leverages the existing collection system, and improving this existing collection system and the informal waste recovery economy, as well as to help it formalize and become part of the circular economy, as I believe we are talking here about the broader circular agenda.
Thank you, Tamara. Mr. Shabir, if you can just extend on that, particularly around what is the EPR regulation, what does it look like, and how can we then apply it more effectively, in South Africa as well? Just take us through some of the challenges that we faced around implementing this regulation and what it actually is about.
Okay, I think prior to getting to the EPR regulation, South Africa has a voluntary producer responsibility organization covering the four plastic streams, glass, metal, as well as paper.
Yes.
We've been running voluntary industry schemes, not called EPR schemes at that stage, but voluntary industry producer responsibility organizations. For most materials in excess of a decade, some paper for argument's sake in terms of recycling and collection systems that have been going on for more than 50 years in South Africa. Also to highlight, without having any government legislation, the collection rate for paper and packaging in South Africa is 58% at 2019. Now that places us among some of the better countries in the world. So I believe we're doing fairly well. However, there is certainly room for improvement. Now, the benefit of EPR regulations will be that we were always the producer responsibility organizations who are all members of Packaging SA, have been voluntary bodies. So a lot of producers, brand owners, retailers have not been contributing because there was no mandatory extended producer responsibility fee. So in light of that, we've had a significant percent of free riders in terms of the relevant producers not paying fees in terms of fees to the producer responsibility organization. What the new legislation will do, it will enforce people, it will make it mandatory for all producers as described or as defined in the Act to pay the EPR fees. The issue of free riders will be gone. In addition to that, a lot of imported packaging has come through and most of it has escaped from the net where they have not waste. When it becomes waste, the packaging, it becomes a burden of those voluntary contributors to the producer responsibility organization scheme. So the days of a free lunch for the Non-compliers are definitely out, and that will change. However, in terms of the legislation, as I indicated earlier, we have engaged with Minister Creasy and her team yesterday, and we're looking at, there are certain issues which cannot be implemented in its current format. The minister was very comfortable with the issues we raised, and we will be forming a working group in terms of making those amendments. We can't go into too much detail on that now, because it just started in the process, but the minister has been very receptive, and we've developed, the industry, the packaging sector has developed a very strong relationship with the minister and the department over the years. So we are very confident that EPR will be implemented in South Africa. And in addition, from the paper and packaging sector, we are totally committed to extended producer responsibility, bar the few parts in terms of the regulations which would be impossible to implement. Once that is addressed with the ministry and the department, we will carry on, we will implement EPR schemes in South Africa. However, finally, I'd just like to stress, albeit that there could be a few amendments to the legislation, the producer responsibility organizations are going full steam ahead in terms of collecting of material and increasing recycling volume. So it's business as usual. It has not stopped. EPR will make it, there will be more funds that will be available, and it will make it mandatory for everyone for all producers to be compliant in terms of the new EPR regulations.
Thank you very much for that. Just as an extension, Emmanuel, just before we come back to you, Bridget, in your opinion, why is waste key to the advancement of the green economy, Emmanuel?
Thanks, Taban. I think, so the question is, why is waste key to the advancement of the green economy? So I think if you look at waste as it is, right, most of the pollution issues that we have actually as a result of waste. I mean, so if we can find ways of integrating this waste back into the economy, a secondary material, then we're all on our way to establishing what's the so-called green economy. You mitigate pollution problems, you reduce heavy reliance on virgin materials, because by getting such raw materials that are probably cheaper as well. And then you can also look at waste as a renewable resource in a way, because waste is unavoidable. Every time you extract value from something, you end up generating waste. But if you can find a value-add solution for that waste, then you're actually working towards a circular economy in a way, which is greener and cleaner. Don't know if that makes sense. Thank you.
Thanks. Bridget, you spoke about some of the incentives that Expan has in place, particularly when it comes to the safe disposal of IT assets. What forecasting model can be used in waste management? And I think maybe tomorrow you can extend after Bridget has provided her inputs. So what forecasting model can be used in waste management, Bridget? Maybe you can also give examples of what Expan has done as well.
Okay. So from our perspective, we obviously work within the electronic waste sector.
Right.
In 2019, there was approximately 54 million metric tons of e-waste that was generated.
Sure.
And only a very small percentage of about 10% that was recycled responsibly.
Yeah.
So what we've done is we've used incentives to encourage corporates or businesses to comply with IT asset disposal measures and to dispose of the assets in a compliant way. So what we do is if you dispose of your asset, for example, within 3 to 5 years of its life, which is quite regular in South Africa. If you think about it, we don't hold on to a cell phone for longer than 2 to 3 years.
Yes.
We would give an incentive for that asset, bring it back into Expan, refurbish it, and redistribute it to somebody who perhaps couldn't afford something new or an asset new. The forecasting would, from a corporate perspective, we would be able to take their IT infrastructure, look at it and tell them what they would get back in the following year, or even as an asset reaches its end of life. So there's a value coming back into the corporate there's a value going out because we are now reusing the asset for smaller companies or for schools. And so there's value all around really for both the corporate organization and for the circular economy.
Thank you very much for that. Tamara, just to really provide an
Yeah.
extent.
Sure. Bridget now kind of make me embarrassed. I'm holding on to my mobile phone for 4 years by now, so I have to go shopping, definitely.
Absolutely.
Very interesting topic. Actually, I was discussing this yesterday with my colleagues who are on a daily basis working on the waste reduction in South Africa. As you know, I'm more of a policy person. And the conclusion is there is no one size fits all. There has to be a model that works best for the local market, and the amount of and composition of waste generated are essential for adequate decision making regarding the management of the solid waste, which we are. Both characteristics of waste vary with time, and they're affected by socioeconomic conditions like pretty much anything else. The most relevant forecasting model that we see for developing countries like our South Africa is the Predictive Generation model. This is developed using the correlation of the socioeconomic variables with the generation of solid waste. The effect of those particular socioeconomic variables such as income level of consumption, spatial design, cultural and education environment around us on the generation of waste are very specific, and they do vary even from town to town and region to region. Predictive forecasting also accounts for the existence of informal practices, both in the generation and in the collection of solid waste. We feel this is the most relevant model for the South African particular context.
100%. 100%. Shabir, what's the impact of the corona pandemic, particularly on packaging, and sustainable consumption? Of course, one would then argue that packaging it's quite far-fetched because corona has, been more affecting us from a health implication perspective. But people forget that packaging is also part of different value chains, and health is actually one of them, because if we use plastic in the long run, it's not really good for us as human beings. We have been told that plastic increases the risk of cancer, for example. So what is the impact of the corona pandemic on packaging, sustainable consumption, waste reduction, and also, if we can call it, the zero waste movement? And perhaps, Emmanuel, you can extend on that after Shabir.
Great. Thanks, Tabang. In terms of COVID-19, it's not only the packaging sector, but industries, businesses across the world have been devastated as a result of COVID-19. A more specific response in terms of your question, in terms of packaging in South Africa. The packaging sector, with the lockdown, faced devastating effects.
Yeah.
What has happened is, let me give you an example in the glass sector, or giving you that as an example. Alcohol ban created huge problems in terms of the glass manufacturing as well as the glass filling sectors. In terms of all glass sales, in terms of all glass put into the market for filling of product, 82% goes into alcoholic beverages. So during the hard lockdowns and during the alcohol ban, which there was one and it was followed by another alcohol ban, glass sales dropped in excess of 80%. That has really made a huge difference. However, not just glass, packaging is huge, but the lockdown demand by consumers has dropped. The level of income, disposable incomes have dropped as well because of significant job losses. But the effects of the industry, I would say, it's been significant. We finding our feet again, and for the 2020 calendar year, we expect total packaging sales volumes to decline between 10 to 15%. We certainly have seen an upturn in demand. However, the one sector that was not really hurt was the essential products and food. And we had significant amounts of inquiries for people looking for plastic bottles for sanitizers, amongst others. for food packaging and the like. So those sectors did exceptionally well, which was necessary in terms of people needing food and also the significant demand for sanitizers. I mean, we were getting inquiries daily. Where can we find these bottles? So, however, if we look at it in totality, the packaging sector has been hurt significantly. And also, prior to the COVID-19, the South African economy was not in great shape. So the demand for packaging, in fact, was already in a downward trend. Nevertheless, we believe it has now more or less flattened out, and we expect that to go further. From a collection perspective during COVID-19, collections had to stop because it was not an essential service. So waste reclaimers couldn't function, waste management companies couldn't function at level 5. So it did have an impact in terms of collection volumes as well. We've seen that in terms of all the materials. Nevertheless, we've gone back now. Since we've gone to level 2 and level 1, impact has now been nullified and we see people collecting. However, we will see less consumption and we will see less collections, which should really be proportionate as a result of lower consumption because of lower disposable income.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you. Emmanuel, any extension on that?
I think I completely agree with what Shabir said, but I'm only speaking as an outsider here. So I'm really being speculative here. So I think what you've noticed, like with the corona situation, is that most economies and industries almost actually just shut down. And I think packaging is synonymous with production. So with less production happening, there is less packaging being produced because of reduced demand as well for the packaging. And I think the ripple effect of that might have been landfills and the recycling sector itself. And obviously, there have been some positives with reduced production. We're looking at reduced GHG emissions due to the environment over that little period of that the corona has been around. And then I think there are also factors around people losing jobs when I'm looking at sustainable consumption, right? So most likely that meant people will probably trying to extract as much value of whatever materials that they have. So that meant reduced wastage. And people also being frugal, as in they were actually spending less, probably spending on essentials alone. But then again, it's also just a wild guess. I'm not really sure how many people or what fraction of the population was actually sort of spending less to try and save. But I think the effect of corona on packaging and sustainable consumption.
Okay, Emmanuel, your network is a little bit has it there. Are you still with us? You can hear us. We heard you a little bit. Can you still hear us?
Okay, I can hear everyone.
Okay, you can.
Yeah,
okay.
Do you need me to repeat what I said?
No, that's fine. I think we just got it.
So
in there.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually just wanted to, because you mentioned it on the issues of landfills. From my perspective, I really would like to know how we can solve open landfill municipal waste, because we know that there's a lot of landfills and municipal waste that is affecting us regionally and affecting the issue of waste in our communities. Do you perhaps have any recommendations there on how we can solve open landfill municipal waste? Are there any state interventions that you have been exposed to in your line of work?
I think in general, and not talking about specific.
Okay, I think.
Sorry.
Okay, Emmanuel, maybe let's allow Tamara to go quickly, and then we'll allow you to extend on that. Tamara?
Sorry, I didn't know that Emmanuel was starting to talk, but in general, without going to any specific region or the city, I think the problem of local municipalities and landfills needs to be a close coordination and strategic work from the central government and the policies adopted in terms of the waste reduction, and then trickling them down to the local municipalities, but not only by centralized political directive, also through soft influence in terms of raising awareness of the importance of cleaning the landfills and the proper collection infrastructure establishment. Those could be public-private partnerships or other forms of collaboration, but I think there are several layers of how a state can work together with local authorities, but also us as an industry can contribute to reduce the waste on the landfills.
100%. Emmanuel, just before we come to you, Bridget, have you been exposed to, any landfills around solid waste as well, particularly in your industry? I know we've had, with China, where a lot of IT assets have been, dumped, and an entire site of waste, which then affected people from a health perspective. Have you been exposed in your line of work around landfills, particularly where IT assets or even electronics and so forth have been dumped?
So, we hear of it quite often. We obviously, from our perspective, we're trying to ensure electronics don't reach any landfills. Right. And so the suppliers we deal with, we ensure that once the asset reaches them, that it's disposed of in a compliant manner. Okay. But yes, we do hear about the assets reaching our landfill. We have had it quite often in South Africa, in fact, where people are not educated enough to know what to do with an asset. If you look at an LCD, for example, so your normal screen, a TV or a computer screen, within that screen, there's toxic materials such as lead, mercury, and cadmium. But because people are not aware, or they're not given facilities to dispose in a compliant manner, they just dump the asset. So they put it in their bin, and that then lands up in our landfill. If we have mercury, which is found in an LCD or a screen, and that's broken, it releases poisonous vapors. And we're still finding that happens in our landfills. The other thing is these toxic materials are seeped through our soil and could reach our water stream, in which case we would then be exposed to other medical conditions.
Right.
I think it's really just people need to be aware of what dumping an asset or electronic asset means to them and to the environment. So we need to provide more education around that. But we also need to provide more facilities, so more electronic bins, if you will, perhaps manufacturers or shopping centers where people can dispose responsibly. What we'll then do is we'll have companies such as ours and other e-waste companies go and collect that waste and try use it for the circular economy. So to try use it to give back. So we can refurbish quite a lot of the assets that are dumped and redistribute them, or use the components to redistribute assets.
Thank you. Emmanuel? Any other extensions? Sorry, we're like back and forth because of network and so forth. Did you perhaps want to add there, Emmanuel?
Yeah, no, that's fine. So just to add to that, so if you look at most of the waste that actually ends up in landfill, it actually still has value. So I think the idea, the issues around unlocking the value of that waste within landfills, and how do people have access to that waste? Because in most cases, I think it's really difficult for people to have access to waste that's already locked within. Access can be unlocked for individuals that want to offtake those materials. I think that will really go a long way in making sure that have the responsibility responsible disposal of stuff that end up in landfills. And if you also look at municipalities as well, I think there are tools that they have and that can help them determine what kind of treatment solution that they can sort of apply to certain waste streams. They get a waste stream, they just look at that tool, like, oh yeah, if I have organics, these alternative treatment options that landfills as well can also act as aggregation points for waste, right? Where all the waste is aggregated, and that will also work towards increasing what's it called, economies of scale for people that want to add value to those waste streams. Thank you.
Thank you. Shabir, will replacing all plastic packaging with biodegradable substitutes, do you think that will solve the problem of waste?
Before I answer that question, I'd just like to make a point on packaging. Of the 100 million tons that are of waste generated in South Africa, packaging is a very small component.
Okay.
And 2%. So the only problem with paper and packaging, it's more visible compared to other kinds of waste. Arguments say the highest waste generated is builders' rubble, followed by, I think it's fly ash, if you look at the state of waste report. But be that as it may, packaging is still a small element, but there's a lot of pressure that the packaging sector does face. But going back to your question, in terms of, would you mind repeating the question again, Taban?
I was actually going to ask you to repeat your point as well, because I found it very interesting and it's worth elaborating on where you said, okay, we've got 100 million waste that is generated, and plastic actually, makes a very small component to that. And then you mentioned that it was builders. I don't know. What are the two major?
Builders' rubble, fly ash, for argument's sake, those are some of the bigger generators. So builders' rubble is huge. I would estimate it in excess of 40%. So if you think about it, I'm not talking just plastic, I'm talking of all paper and packaging, including Tetra Pak, this is the Tetra Pak session.
Yeah.
All of it is less than 2% that's generated in South Africa. And as I did indicate earlier, 58% of all paper and packaging placed into the market annually is collected, and the majority is recycled or beneficiated, and they're not exported to China. Most of it is almost all of it is being upcycled, beneficiated, or recycled in South Africa, because we have a very developed recycling facilities. However, going back to, have I answered that adequately? And then we can go to the next point about.
Yes, let me ask you the question. So, in fact, I'm going to tilt it a bit. The question was, will replacing all plastic packaging with biodegradable substitutes solve the problem of waste? So perhaps let me rephrase it and say, will replacing all harmful packaging with biodegradable substitutes solve the problem of waste, in your opinion?
Well, we need to look at different kinds of packaging. Certain types of packaging are inert, so they have no environmental impact. I mean, in terms of giving off any harmful chemicals or any leaching that will end up in landfill. Not that we want materials to end up in landfill. Certain products are inert and they have no impact whatsoever.
Yes.
However, changing, let's talk the plastics issue or the problematic packaging. If you change all packaging to biodegradable, currently in South Africa, what you would need, and it's still also in its infancy internationally, what is biodegradable packaging? You also get oxy-biodegradables, but we're not going to get into a whole detail on that. But the problem is, if you mix normal plastic, for argument's sake, which can be recycled with biodegradable plastic, and it ends up in the same recycling stream, that's a problem. So what one needs to do is sort the biodegradables at source, and it be collected separately, and it has to go into mass facilities for creating products such as fertilizer, as an example. So biodegradables are not the solution at this stage. There still needs to be a lot of work. I don't believe it's going to be a panacea to plastics or problematic packaging at this stage. We need to certainly look at, in my opinion, plastics is here to remain. It's how we handle it It's how consumers, producers, and society in general, how we handle it. The important issue is biodegradables is not going to solve our problems, because if it ends up in the wrong waste stream, or it doesn't go into huge composting facilities, then it's pointless, because that will create more of a problem, because you will have fragments of the micro, I can't call it microplastics, whatever it's made out of, but a lot of the plastics are purportedly biodegradable, but in the true sense, it needs large collection facilities and large processing facilities as well. Every product has its pluses and minuses, but we also need to look at, in terms of packaging, as someone has alluded to earlier, in terms of the importance of packaging with regard to protecting food in particular. We can't say we don't need packaging. We need packaging, but it's a matter of changing mindsets and behavior as well, and not just changing from one material to the other. In addition, if we go for biodegradables, from a life cycle analysis, is it going to be better than plastic, for argument's sake? I'm not saying plastics does not have its issues. Certainly there are issues with plastics and other materials as well. But the manner, what will the carbon footprint be of these biodegradables? There's still a lot of work that
Yep, 100%.
Yeah, and I have to, Tabang, I have to agree with this. It's not a matter of changing one for another. It's the matter of looking at the climate impact, looking at the carbon footprint. And this is something that we have been very much engaged with. As we know, the problem of the waste did not appear overnight, and there are no quick fixes. But we believe there are sustainable, nature-based solutions. If I may mention, for example, we introduced bio-based packaging back in 2019, made 90% out of the renewable materials in South Africa. This packaging includes materials derived from wood and bio-based plastic made of sugarcane. To an extent, this could offset a portion of a lower consumption of sugar in consumer food products as well. So it gives sort of a healthy impact, and also prepare for the predicted worldwide shortage of sugarcane plastic, but would require investment, obviously, in various equipment and processes. So we need to think about packaging being more of a low carbon, contributing to the climate agenda, but also being recyclable and renewable.
100%. Thank you very much. Any other interventions that some of you would like to add that your organizations have perhaps done, just as an extension to what Tamara has said? Any other interventions? Yes, Emmanuel?
Yes, from my side, just adding what Tamara just said. So if you look at the plastic problem, as you call it, I think it's tough, right? It's more management issue. So I think having biodegradable plastics might solve the issue just to a small extent. Also stand corrected, but I think when you start talking about biodegradable plastics, they don't just biodegrade by themselves. They have to be under certain conditions of temperature, humidity, optimal biodegradation. Otherwise, the process is just as slow as for mineral plastics. And so the other thing is, if we start now looking at the bigger picture, because the biodegradable products that are coming out of the plastics, those are your CO2 and your methanes. And if you're looking at the vision of this net zero emissions, then you're actually working against it, because you're actually still venting carbon emissions to the atmosphere. I just thought I'd add that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Bridget?
I think from my end, obviously we don't deal with packaging, but we do deal with plastics. From our end, we try very much to, as I said, reuse whatever we can, but there are scenarios in which we have plastics and packaging that we need to responsibly recycle. And I think what we need to do is ensure that the companies that we use, or the suppliers we use, we need to do a vetting process to ensure that they are recycling correctly. What we found in our industry is there are a lot of recyclers that will come knocking on your door for waste, if you will. And what they do is they take what they can, but the rest they dump, and it's not in a sustainable manner. And we found that that's quite prevalent in our industry. What we do is we ensure that downstream, whatever we're doing, the suppliers that we use are doing the same thing. So they follow the same ethical behavior. Any plastics that we are unable to use, we give it on to our supplier, who then sells it on to smelters. We know exactly what's going to happen with that plastic because we follow the chain of custody, or sorry, the chain of disposal. So I think everybody needs to follow the same. You can't just dump something and believe that it's going to be disposed of or recycled in a sustainable manner.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay, we've got about 5 minutes. Let's have our closing remarks. Just last sentiments, final thoughts, particularly around this topic. Anything that we should also look out for from your organization. So Tamara, I don't know if you'd like to start with that.
Thank you. I would say, as we discussed, the topic is very complex, obviously, and there is a lot to be done. South Africa is on a good journey to reaching the mission of the significant waste reduction and going towards net zero waste. In our vision, we also are working on a global scale to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. And in our strategy 2030, the objective is to have net zero emissions by 2030, and by 2050 to have those in the whole supply chain. And in terms of developing the most sustainable food package, we are looking at maximizing the use of materials that will eventually reduce the impact on the nature. As I said, this climate impact is very important. Increasing the paper-based and plant-based content in our packages and sourcing the raw materials in a way that protects biodiversity and natural environment. This is our commitment, and we will stay religiously focused on this in South Africa and elsewhere.
Thank you very much, Tamara. That was Tamara Bullock. Thank you for those sentiments and the contributions as well. Truly insightful. Shabir?
As Packaging SA, we are totally committed to increasing collection of paper and packaging, also reducing carbon emissions, as well as contributing towards a green economy in many aspects. So, and we represent them, as I'm indicated earlier, the majority of converters, brand owners, retailers, and a whole host of other members, and we're totally committed towards promoting and doing the right thing in terms of reducing carbon emissions. We also believe that we can't, as industry, we can't achieve this alone. We need to work together with government, and we need to work together with the people of South Africa. It's not it has to be it's no mutually exclusive solution. It has to be combined and collaborative effort amongst everyone in South Africa to make sure that we can achieve this. It certainly can, but it needs commitment from people, and it can't be taught. I really believe that we need to walk this talk.
Thank you, Mr. Shabir. That was Shabir Jatam, Executive Director of Packaging SA. Thank you very much. Truly very, especially on the alcohol, you know, that broke my heart, you know, the 80% of the bottles. I'm so sad about that. So much wine and our grapes going to waste, you know. So thank you so much, Shabir, for highlighting that. You touched my soul. Thank you.
And amazing South African wine, worldwide known.
Absolutely. And healthy for the heart as well.
Exactly.
Thank you so much.
From our end, we'd love to expand on the circular economy. This has been a focus from Expan throughout the year. Sustainability is quite big on our end. And we'd like to give more and help more. So the more electronic equipment that we get and we're able to refurbish, the more we give back. And this provides obviously more jobs. The more we have, the more we can employ, the more NGOs we can support. So from our end, just by disposing of your assets in a compliant manner and in the right manner, it actually helps grow the economy from our perspective. Throughout lockdown, we had such high demand for IT kits, particularly with scholars. There were a lot of school children that didn't have access to computers. But on the other end, what we had was a lot of businesses that couldn't dispose of the assets because it wasn't seen as an essential service or a requirement. So they were holding on to it in these storerooms. Rather let it go, let us refurbish it and put it back into the schools or into the NGOs so that we can ensure that we have an economy that keeps going and keeps circulating. From our side, we will continue to contribute towards the landfills, well, in a positive manner. We do not want to contribute towards the landfills, so it's zero waste to landfill from our side. And we will try to educate as many South Africans as possible to do the same.
Thank you, Bridget Vermaak from Experian. Thank you very much. We truly appreciate as well your contributions on this panel discussion. Emmanuel.
Thank you, Tabang. Just as a last, I think when we are looking at the vision, the net zero emissions vision, I think it's really important to take context in consideration, because if you look at our country, South Africa per se, I mean, we have other issues that we are actually going through, that we're facing, problems that acute stresses like like unemployment, we have to deal with stuff like education, poverty, health. So I think it would be a very good thing to actually try and balance all those three spheres: your environment, your economic, and your social aspects. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was Emmanuel Kasese, Program Manager of Western Cape Industrial Symbiosis Program. Thank you, all of you, for your time. Once again, a great appreciation and gratitude to Tetra Pak for being one of our leading partners. So Packaging SA, you are also, by virtue of affiliation and association, you are also some kind of a partner and sponsor to this event, just because of Tetra Pak. So thank you so much for all your contributions. And we do believe that it will contribute to a lot of social awareness, particularly with SMMEs, a lot of enterprises as well that are in the recycling economy and that are also part of waste management is a key priority for their business. Even packaging, I mean, restaurants alone are deriving a lot of knowledge from this. So thank you all for your time and wish you all the best. And we hope to hear more of the great interventions that your organizations and your companies are part of.